Okay, Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Chagigah Daf Vav. We're going to start on Hey Yom Beis, around 20 lines from the bottom, where the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, Shlosha Kadosh Baruch Hu Bocha Elam Kol Yom. There are three people, or three types of people. God cries for them every day. Al She'efshar La'asok B'Torah Ve'enu Osek. God cries for somebody who's possible, who's able to study Torah, but doesn't. Number two, somebody who really shouldn't be studying Torah, but yet they try. And a person who is a parnes, who's a communal leader, who acts arrogantly over the community. Rebbe was holding a book of eulogies, the book of Eicha, which is called the Book of Lamentations, in his hand, the Kakari Bigave, and he was reading from it. Kimato Ahai Psuko, when it came to this verse, which says, Hashlech Mishamayim Eretz, that was tossed from heaven to the earth, meaning to say the Jewish people were thrown from high to the ground. Nafal Min Yadeh, the book fell from his hand. Amar, and he said as follows, he said, Me'igra Rama Bira Mikta, from the high roof to the low pit. This is actually the title, this phrase, from the high pit to the low pit, from the high roof to the low pit, is the title of an essay of Reb Chaim Shmulevitz in Sichos Musar about how to explain how the Jewish people could have sinned with the golden calf, how they went from such a high level to a low level so quickly. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says that the source of such a fall was fear and anxiety, because the whole world was in confusion and mixed up. Anyway, that's the title of his essay. Rebbe and Reb Chia were walking along the road. So they came to a city, and they said, They said to the person, they said, is there a young Torah scholar here that we can go and greet him? Give him chizuk, we'll fulfill a mitzvah of honoring a Torah scholar. So the people said, there is a Torah scholar here, however, he's blind, he's me'orinayim. This is literally, he has light in his eyes, but it's a euphemism for being blind. Rabbi Chia said to Rebbe, Tivat, you stay, it's not appropriate for the Nasi to go, you stay here, you're the Nasi. Rabbi Chia said, I'll go and I'll greet him. Takfe, Rebbe insisted, and he went. He didn't listen, he went. When they left this Torah scholar, this blind Torah scholar, they visited Amrahu. The Torah scholar said to them, Atemik baltem panim, hanirim ve'inon rowan. You greeted the face of the one who is seen but does not see. Tizku, may you merit in return, lahakil pneim haroim ve'inon nirim. May you in turn merit to encounter the one who sees but is not seen. I.e., may you merit to encounter God. Amar way. So when Rebbe said to Rebbe Chia, Iko hashtam min ha'asan mehai berchasa. If I would have listened to you, you would have held me back from getting this incredible blessing. Amar way miman shmielach. So they turned to the blind rabbi, and they said, where did you hear such a beautiful blessing? He said, Mipirka de Rabbi Yaakov Shmielach. I heard it from the teachings of Rabbi Yaakov. The Rabbi Yaakov ish Kfar Chitaya. Rabbi Yaakov was from Kfar Chitaya. V'makbil abe de Rebbe. And he used to, every day he would call Yom, every day he would go to greet his Rebbe. Kikash, when Rabbi Yaakov got older, Amrlei, the Rebbe said to him, he said, don't give yourself such a hard time. It's too much for you. Stay home. Amrlei, mi zuter mai dechsiv bugrab. And he said, is it any less than what's written by the rabbis? That the verse says in Tehillim that somebody who sees the Chachamim while they're dying will have eternal life. And so it says, Rabbi Yaakov, if you're going to see the Chachamim while they're dying, and you're going to be blessed with eternal life, how much more so will you be blessed if you see them while they're alive? Meaning to say, we spend so much time in our world, in our thought process, honoring the dead. What about honoring the living? It's even greater mitzvah, an even greater honor. So he says, for sure, we have to go and honor them while they're alive. That's what Rabbi Yaakov said. He said, I'm going to continue going to visit my Rebbe every day. Rav Idi, Avua de Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Rav Idi, who was the father of Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, have a ragil, he used to spend 3 months on the road and then 1 day in the base medrash. So the rabbis used to call him in a not a nice way. They would say, "You're the 1 day rabbi, 1 day a year rabbi, or 1 day every 3 months." So Rav Idi was upset, and when a Torah scholar gets upset, you have to be concerned that that Hashem is gonna punish the people. So he got upset. So Karya Navsha, he said, he cited a verse from Job about himself. I've become a laughing stock amongst my friends. Rabbi Yochanan saw this. He said, I'm begging you, don't be upset with them so that I don't want them to get punished. Don't punish the rabbis. Rabbi Yochanan goes out to the base medrash and he gives them a drash, and he says, Yom Yom Yidrishun. It says in the verse from Isaiah, every day you should seek me out, Yom Yom, B'das Drachai Yachbatzun. And the ways of my paths he shall desire. What does that mean? Do we only seek out God during the day and not at night? Why does it say Yom Yom? You seek out God during the day and not at night? It's to tell you, whoever engages in Torah study even 1 day a year, the Torah, well, if you really wanted to study every day, but you just weren't able to because you had to travel, this, that, on business, then if you study 1 day a year, but your desire was to study the whole day, then we view you as though you were actually studying the whole year. Okay, but still, everybody should do the Daf Yomi every day. Don't rely on this not to do the Daf Yomi. And so too, the midas aparanios, but also when it comes to the reverse, the midas paranios, when it comes to punishments, it says by the spies, the number of days that you toured the land, that since you toured the land of Israel for 40 days, you'll be punished for 40 years. Do they sin for 40 years? Why were they given a 40-year punishment? They only sin for 40 days. Whoever violates a sin, even 1 day a year, the Torah views you as though you violated the entire year. What's a minor? Anybody who's not able to ride on the shoulders of his father. So this is a dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in our Mishnah. At what point are you obligated to bring the child to educate him in the mitzvah of doing a pilgrimage? Beis Shammai says from the point where the father could bring the child without the mother, i.e. by putting him on his shoulders, whereas Beis Hillel says from the point where the father can hold the child's hand and walk from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount. But presumably, the point is that the Gemara is going to, Rabbi Zera asked the question, which is really a question on Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Maskefal Rabbi Zera challenges this. We're on top of 6a, ad hacha man asye, meaning to say, how did the child get to Jerusalem in the first place? It must be that the father took him from his original city to Jerusalem. How did he take him without the mother? He must have been able to take him. So if that's the case, the father could easily take the child up from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount. If he took him from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, then for sure take him from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount. So of course he should be out. It's not even a question, according to both opinions, that the father should have to take the child once he's in Jerusalem up to the Temple Mount. So the Gemara says, so I see say ime. No, the mother brought him to Jerusalem because the mother is obligated in rejoicing on the festival. And how do you rejoice? With your family, by eating the yontif meal with your family. So the mother was there with the father and the whole family. So therefore, the mother has to rejoice, and so therefore the mother brought him to Jerusalem. But from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount, that's a dispute. If he can, Beis Hillel says if he can hold his hand and walk, he's liable. Below Potter, otherwise he's exempt. So, Rebbe, hold on. Heishav Rebbe Tachas Beisilo. So Rebbe comes along and wants to give a boost for Beisilo against Beis Shammai. So Rebbe says the Chana will also recites the pasuk about Chana that we read on Rosh Hashanah and Torah, and it says that Chana didn't go up. Chana didn't go up to Shiloh. She didn't bring Shmuel up to Shiloh. Why? She said to her husband Elkanah, once the child is weaned, Ravi Yosef, and then I'll bring him up. Now, how old is a child when a child is weaned? Today, you could stop nursing at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 15 months. But in the time of the Talmud, they didn't have the baby formula. It was 2 years, 24 months. That's when a child was weaned. So therefore, Chana didn't bring him up until, because even though he was able to go on the father's shoulders because he was over a year. You could go on the father's shoulders when you're much younger, when you're around a year, as long as the child could sit up, or even less than a year. But the child could walk only later. So Chana didn't bring him up because she said, "I'm waiting until he's weaned." Shmuel was able to sit on his father's shoulders by that point, and so this proves it's a proof against Beis Shammai, because he's not obligated to bring him up until the child can walk. So Rebbe, who had raised this question about education, is answered by his own father. So his father says, why wasn't Chana there in the first place? Doesn't she have an obligation of rejoicing in the festival? So why wasn't Chana there? Because Chana mefankusa yisei rasa chazia b'Shmuel. V'chasha bei b'Shmuel l'chol shadurcha. Chana saw that Shmuel was delicate, and Chana saw even in her son. She said it's not appropriate for him to go up. See from here a tremendous musar that every child is different, and Chana said my child needs to go in later. I'm not going to push him ahead. And nevertheless, even though Shmuel was held back from his religious service because Chana was worried about his mifankusa yisera, his extra delicateness, nevertheless, he grew up to be one of the greatest prophets in the history of the Jewish people. Rabbi Shimon. So now Rabbi Shimon has a question. Katan chiger. So we said that if a person is a chiger, a lame or blind, they're exempt from the pilgrimage. And a minor, the parents are obligated to bring the minor. What about if the minor is lame or blind? So according to Beis Shammai, who says, look, the child is not going to have to walk, so it doesn't matter that he's lame. He's going to go on his father's shoulders. Or sumo a divrei shneim. A blind person. What's the reason why a blind person can't go up? Maybe it's because he can't get there, but we're going to help the blind man go up. He's the blind child. Anyway, he's going to hold his father's hand. So is this going to be obligated to go up? So what's going to be the law by the lame or the blind child? So Gemara says, what are we talking about? If we're talking about a chiger who is never going to be healed, or a blind child is never going to be healed, well, then it's obviously the case that that's a hasha gadol pater katami bai. If he would be an adult, he'd be exempt. So for sure, as a child, he's going to be exempt. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about a child who's lame right now or blind right now, but by the time they're an adult, they'll be completely healed. So what's going to be the law there? So do we say that we view them as a child now, and so therefore, do we say we view them right now as lame and blind, and so therefore we're not obligated to educate them, or do we say no, that by the time they're an adult, they're going to have to know how to do it, so therefore start now already? So Amar Abaye Kohecha the Galo Machayev Midyaraisa Katan Nami Machanchen Lei Midrabanan. So Abaye says any case where if the in that scenario the adult will be biblically allocated, then the minor we also have a rabbinic obligation to educate him. But Kohecha the Galo Pater Midyaraisa, but wherever the adult is going to be exempt biblically speaking, Midrabanan Katan Nami Pater. Then rabbinically speaking also, the minor would be exempt. And so in this case, since the adult would be exempt, therefore the minor we're exempt from having to bring up the minor to the pilgrimage. Now we go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that there are two korbanos, there are two sacrifices there is going to be three actually, but there are two that our Mishnah discusses about with respect to the pilgrimage. There's the Olas Re'iyah, or the Olat Re'iyah, and the Shalmei Chagigah. So the Chagigah and the Re'iyah offering. So the Re'iyah offering is entirely burnt, except all the meat is entirely burnt on the altar. The skin is given. The skin is not burnt. The skin was divided by the Kohanim, and then or the Baalim or the owners, and we saw that they gave it to their hosts in Jerusalem. We saw that in Moed Katan. And then in addition to that, there is also the Chagigah. The Chagigah is partially eaten by the Kohen, partially by the owner, and partially by the altar. So Beis Shammai had said in our Mishnah that the Olas Re'iyah the minimum price is twice as much as the Chagigah. Beis Hillel says the opposite. The price of the Chagigah is twice as much as the Re'iyah. So the Gemara now discusses this. Tanar Rabbanan, the rabbis taught the price. It says Beis Shammai Omer Re'iyah Shtei Kesef, Chagigah Mea Kesef. Beis Shammai says the Re'iyah is 2 Me'av Kesef and the Chagigah is 1 Me'av Kesef, and Shari'ah Ola Kul Adbo, because the Re'iyah is entirely burnt. All the meat is burnt, so therefore it should be worth more. And then, unlike the Chagigah, and the second explanation for why Beis Shammai says the Re'iyah is more money is because, and the second reason is because and also because the Re'iyah was brought on Shavuos, we bring an O on Shavuos, and the Torah has more Oos there than Shlomim. The Re'iyah is a form of an Olah, and on Shavuos we see that the Torah says that you have to bring more Olas than Shlomim. So we see the Olah is more distinguished. So therefore the Olah costs twice as much as the Chagigah. Whereas Beis Hillel says no, the opposite. A Re'iyah Mea Kesef, a Chagigah Shtei Kesef. Beis Hillel says the Re'iyah is 1 piece of silver and the Chagigah is 2 pieces. Why? Chagigah Yeshno Lefnei Adibor. Beis Hillel has 2 explanations. First of all, it says at the end of Mishpatim, the verse that states that Vayishlachas Nari B'nai Yisrael, that the youth of Israel gathered and they brought Olos and they sacrificed Shlomim. El Hashem Parim. Now, this happened in the Torah. It's written after the 10 Commandments. It's written at the end of Mishpatim, and the 10 Commandments is in Yisrael. But Rashi tells us there's no Mukta Mumuchar b'Torah. There's no order to the Torah. So this really took place prior to Sinai. Rashi says it explicitly. Kodem Matan Torah. This took place prior to Sinai. So therefore, Beis Hillel says that the reason why the Re'iyah is worth less than the Chagigah is because at Sinai they brought the Chagigah. It says they brought Karban Shlomim. They brought Karban Shlomim, and so therefore that teaches us, since it happened prior to Sinai, that teaches us that the Chagigah is more important. The Shlomim is more important than the Olah. And Masha'en came Be'iyah, and the Re'iyah was not brought prior to Sinai, says Beis Hillel. Od Matzinu b'Nesim, and also when the Nesim dedicated the Mishkan, we see Shariba and Akasa b'Shlomim Yosef min ba'Olah. So they brought more Karban Shlomim than Olah, so the Shlomim is more distinguished. So the Gemara asks the question: Beis Hillel, my time Beis Shammai. Why does Beis Hillel not adopt Beis Shammai's approach that the Re'iyah is more important because the Re'iyah is entirely to God, and also there's more Re'iyah, there's more Olas by Shavuos? So Beis Hillel doesn't say that because he says the Ka'amras Re'iyah Difa the Olah call Gvoa, because the Olah is entirely to God. Just the opposite. Adarabba, Beis Hillel says, just the opposite. Chagigah Difa, the Karban Chagigah is better. Why? You say it's better if everything goes to God. I say it's better if some goes to God and some goes to the humans to eat. The Isba Shtei Achilos, God eats from it and the humans eat from it. So that's better, I say. With the Ka'amras Neilach Me'atzeres, and you say, oh, we should derive it from the laws of Shavuos. No. Done in Karban Yacham, ain't done in Karban Yacham, Karban Tzibur. No, we learn out an individual offering from another individual offering. The Chagigah is learned out from another, would be learned out from an individual offering, or an Olah, or this Olah is also an individual offering, and don't learn out from a communal offering, which is Shavuos. So Beis Shammai, my timing, Beis Hillel. Why doesn't Beis Shammai adopt the approach of Beis Hillel, who says that the Chagigah is worth more? So he says, I'll tell you the problem with Beis Hillel's logic. The Ka'amras Chagigah Adifa Diyesh Nofnei Adibor. You said the Chagigah is better because it took place before Sinai. Well, guess what? That same verse that talks about the Chagigah being brought before Sinai also says Vayalu Olos. They also brought an Olah offering. So they brought the Re'iyah there too, says Beis Shammai. What Olah did they bring? They brought the Re'iyah because they saw God. It says Vayachazu. They saw God. They saw God's face here. They brought a Re'iyah. With the Ka'amras, So he says, "Rias nami yesh nafnei adibor." The kameras neof minasiim, and you say, let's learn out from the princes because they brought more shlomim. They brought more shlomim than olos. Dan and davar noe gudoros, mean davar noe gudoros, ain't davar noe gudoros, mean davar shein noe gudoros. We're not going to learn out something which is for all generations, i.e., the Shalmei Chagigah and the Olas Re'iyah from the Nesiim, which was a one-off in history. It was only the dedication of the Mishkan. So therefore, Beis Shammai says we're not going to adopt Beis Hillel's approach. Beis Hillel Mashna the Chagigah the Yeshna of Nei Adibor. Well, the Gemara says, well, Beis Hillel has Beis Shammai has a good question on Beis Hillel. It says in the verse that they brought the Olos. So why do you only say that they brought a Shlomim prior to Sinai? So Mashna Chagigah the Yeshna of Nei Adibor d'chsev vayizbechu zvachim Shlomim. It says in the verse they brought a Shlomim. Re'iyah nami haksev vayav Olos. What about the Re'iyah? It also says they brought the Olos. Where it says, well, Kasari Beis Hillel, because Beis Hillel's other position, Olas sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar, Olas tamid havai. So Beis Hillel says, yeah, it says they brought Olos there. They did bring an Olah, but it wasn't the Olas Re'iyah. It was just a daily offering, and so therefore the Chagigah is going to be worth twice as much as the Olas Re'iyah, because there they're talking about just the carbon, the regular Olah. Do you have a question? Somebody have a question? Okay. So the Gemara says, Beis Shammai Savri. Beis Shammai is in the position, no, that Olah that they brought there, Sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar, that Olah that they brought at that moment in the wilderness at Midbar Sinai before the giving of the Torah was not a regular Tamid, but it was an Olas Re'iyah. It was an Olas Re'iyah. So the fundamental dispute, Beis Shammai says that Olah that they brought there was what's called an Olas Re'iyah, whereas Beis Hillel says it was the Olas Tamid. And therefore, the Chagigah is worth twice as much as the Olas Re'iyah, because the Chagigah happened prior to Sinai, but not the Re'iyah. So Amar Abaye, Beis Shammai is actually consistent with two other sources, with the position of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shmuel. Kul Sfiru, all of them are of the position Olah sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar, that this Olah that they brought at that moment prior to Sinai was the Olas Re'iyah, was the pilgrimage offering, the Olah upon seeing God. Whereas Beis Hillel agrees with Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Kul Sfiru, all of them are of the positions Olah sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar, that this Olah that they brought in the wilderness was the Olas Tamid Havi, was the daily offering. So Beis Shammai, how do we know that Beis Shammai says it was the Olas Re'iyah? We just explained, because it says, we just saw how he said it. We saw how he said it. That's why the Re'iyah is worth twice as much as the Chagigah, because he doesn't think the Chagigah was the only one prior to Sinai. How do we know Rabbi Shmuel also says it? The Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Kos, Nemar B'Sinai, Pratos lo Nemar B'Sinai. Rabbi Shmuel is in the position that at Sinai they only said the general principles. They didn't say the specifics of all the laws. Rashi says in this specific case, I mean, this is obviously a very deep point throughout the whole Torah, that at Sinai, according to Rabbi Shmuel, they only gave the general rules. They didn't give all the specifics. We have the specifics for later. But according to Rashi's explanation is that they didn't give the laws of how you're supposed to bring the carbon tummy. They didn't say you have to skin it and cut it up. And so for that reason, they couldn't have brought the carbon tummy. So therefore, he says they brought the general rules, but not the specifics. So on the top of 6b. Pratos ba'ol moed. The pratos, the specifics are only given in the ol moed. Whereas Rabbi Kiva says, "Kol to pratos never b'Sinai." Rabbi Kiva says, no, they gave all the laws. That's why Rabbi Kiva is going to say they brought the Talmud prior to Sinai. They brought all the laws. V'nishnu ba'ol moed. They were repeated at the ol moed. V'nishtalshu ba'arusmov. And they did it a third time on the plains of Moed. And if you want to say like Rabbi Akiva, that the laws that the offerings that they brought in the wilderness were the Olas Tamid, Mika Mida Mekargo by Hefshet Benituach, is it possible, according to Rabbi Shmuel, that who says they just brought the general rules, is it possible that initially they didn't teach these laws of an Olah that you have to skin it and then cut it up, or self by and afterwards they did. So it's not possible that they brought the Olas Tamid according to Rabbi Shmuel. They must have brought the Olas Re'iyah. And how do we know that Rabbi Elazar is also of the position that they brought the Olas Re'iyah at Sinai and not the Olas Tamid? The Tanya Olas Tamid Asuyar Sinai. The verse states in Bamidbar, this is the daily Tamid that they brought at Sinai. Rabbi Elazar Omer Masanam Sinai, as the mayor pointed out to us, that they just talked about it at Sinai. They didn't actually do it. The Yatzmo Karva, and this was not actually brought. Whereas Rabbi Kiva Omer Karva, they actually brought the daily Tamid, Veshuvo Pascha, and they never stopped. They brought the carbon Tamid every single day in the wilderness. Mani Mekayim. Well, what about the verse from Amos? What about the verse from Amos where it says, "This is a question. Did you bring to me your offerings in the wilderness? So the verse states, Beit Israel, that did you really bring these offerings to me in the wilderness for 40 years? Amos says you never brought those offerings. So, but Rabbi Akiva says they brought them every day. So the Gemara explains, Shifto Shalevi, Shalavdu Avodazara, Hani Krivosa. So we see from here, who brought those offerings every day, according to Rabbi Akiva, must be the tribe of Levi. Anyway, we see from here, both according to the position of Rabbi Yishmael, Beis Shammai and Rabbi Lazar, that the offering that they brought in the wilderness was the Oas Re'iyah and not the Oas Tamid, and so therefore you can't say, like Beis Hillel tried to say, that the Chagigah should be worth more because it was brought at Sinai, whereas the Oas Re'iyah wasn't, because they say the Oas Re'iyah was brought at Sinai. So says the Gemara, and now let's do the opposite. Let's see the three who agree with Beis Hillel, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Beis Hillel, we already said. Beis Hillel Hadamram, we already said Beis Hillel's logic, because we said specifically that the Chagigah was brought at Sinai, because it says V'yizbechu Shlamim. Rabbi Akiva Hanami Damram, we just said Rabbi Akiva says that they brought the Tamid prior. What about Rabbi Yossi Aglili? How do we know Rabbi Yossi Aglili that they brought at Sinai was the Oas Tamid and not the Oas Re'iyah, the daily offering? The Tanya Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer. And this is a brisa that really should have been cited at the very beginning of the tractate. Shalosh mitzvos, mitzvah Yisrael ba'osim l'regel. There were 3 commandments that the children of Israel were commanded when they do a pilgrimage. Re'iyah, the carbon re'iyah, to make a oas re'iyah, the chagigah, to bring a chagigah offering, v'simcha, and the shalmei simcha, to bring another offering. Yesh each one of these offerings has 2 aspects which the other one doesn't have. They each have one unique law. What does the oas re'iyah have? The re'iyah is entirely burnt to God, all the meat. What the other two, which is not true by the others. The others people get to eat from it. There's the Chagigah has what the other 2 don't have. Chagigah, so we see Rabbi Yossi Aglili saying it. The Chagigah is the one that happened prior to Sinai, not the Oas Re'iyah. So that's the proof that Rabbi Yossi Aglili agrees with Beis Hillel. And Yesh B'Simcha, what does the Shalmei Simcha have that the other 2 don't have? The idea of rejoicing on the festival applies to both men and women. This is the first of the 3 that the women are also obligated in. So we see from here that Rabbi Yossi Aglili's other position that the sacrifice that they brought prior to Sinai was the Oas Tamid and not the Oas Re'iyah. Rabbi Shmuel my taima komukmo sla kabesh Shammai. What's the reason why Rabbi Shmuel, you want to say, follows Beis Shammai, that Rabbi Shmuel says that the Oah that they brought there was the Re'iyah, and the Isak daitach Oah sheikrivu Yisrael b'midbar Oas Tamid have, because if you want to say that it was the Oas Tamid, your argument was, how can it be that at first they didn't require this the skinning, and now later on they would? But it can't be that. That's not a good question. Rabbi Yossi Aglili himself taught that indeed by the Oas Tamid you didn't require initially the skinning and the flaying, and then you did. Did Tanya Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer Oas Shekriv Yisrael b'midbar ina tuna hefshen leituach fisha ein hefshen leituach el me'oav ve'elach. He says explicitly the carbon Oah, that the Tamid that you brought every day in the wilderness did not require skinning and flaying. It was only later on at the Ol Moed that they required it. So the Gemara says, okay, you're right. Sami Mikan Rabbi Shmuel. So you're right. It's a very good point. Remove Rabbi Shmuel. So in the end, we only have 2. Rabbi Lazar and Beis Shammai are in the position that in the wilderness at Sinai, prior to Sinai, they brought the Oas Re'iyah, and therefore the Oas Re'iyah is also going to be worth more than the Chagigah. Whereas Beis Hillel, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Rabbi Akiva, not necessarily Rabbi Shmuel, but certainly Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva are all in the position that it was as an Oas Tamid at Sinai, not an Oas Re'iyah. Therefore, the Chagigah is worth more, as double the amount of the Oas Re'iyah. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address the questions.